Hey, what's up, YouTube fans? So, the topic for this video, right, is how intelligent design, quote unquote, right, does not at all help with explaining non-statistical questions regarding the origination of life, right? So I oftentimes make videos talking about how all statistical improbabilities regarding the origination of life are easily accounted for, trivially accounted for, even though creationists make a big deal about it. I saw this meme recently where it showed a diagram of a cell and it said all of these parts had to be together at once. The odds of it happening by chance, and it said like one in like this really large number, like something to the power of something or whatever. And it said, creation isn't blind faith, it's logic. And it's like, the thing is, that number you came up with, like, that was like under the one, like 1 divided by whatever number, there could very well be that number of planets, not to mention that on any single planet there's numerous opportunities, right? Because we're talking about something microscopic happening anywhere across the whole surface of an entire planet and within the entire history of that planet. But there could even very well be that number of planets out there. And even if you were to take that number and put it to the power of itself, and then take that number and put it to the power of itself, there could very well be that number of planets out there. There could very well be infinite planets out there. Even if not infinite, it could be any crazy large number. We currently have no clue how many planets there are. There's no limit to how many there plausibly could be with our current knowledge, right? And we don't actually need like a explanation that accounts for how the origination of life could be like a common thing that happens on a large percentage of the planets. We don't actually need an explanation that accounts for that, because we don't actually have strong evidence that that's the case. It very well may be a very uncommon thing, right? We don't have strong evidence at all that it is common, right? Because since all life on Earth traces back to one single common ancestor, the origination of life from non-life only had to happen once on Earth, right? And we know of nowhere else where there's confirmed to be life. And we have very good reason to think that no matter how rare life is, observers like me and you could only find themselves on a planet where there is life, right? Because without life, you never get anything with brain, sensory organs, or anything analogous to that, right? And so we have very good reason to think that on any planet out there where there is no life, there would be nothing there to observe the lack of life, because there would be nothing with eyes, ears, brain, none of that. So there would be nothing there to observe the lack of life, right? So that therefore leads to a bias in what us observers should find to be the condition of our world, right? Therefore, meaning that our observation that it happened here is not in of itself strong evidence that it's at all common. It could be extraordinarily rare, right? And so, I mean, it's the same reason as, like, why do me and you find ourselves on the surface of the Earth as opposed to somewhere deep inside of the sun? There's far more places deep inside of the sun than there are on the surface of the Earth. So why do me and you find ourselves here as opposed to like somewhere deep in the sun or somewhere in outer space? It's probably because, there's nothing deep inside of the sun that has brain or sensory organs or anything like that. So there's nothing there to observe their own existence, right? Simple as that. But so in any event, what I further wanted to talk about in this video, right, is how some people will be unsatisfied when you explain how we don't actually need a statistically plausible explanation for the origination of life, right? Because it doesn't have to be at all common. Some people will want to know, like, well, what about the non-statistical questions regarding the origination of life, where it's not a matter of that, it's not a matter of like, oh, we don't have enough opportunities, right? But it's just like we don't know physically how could it happen. So what I wanted to talk about with that on this video, right, is that intelligent design, quote unquote, does not at all address that, does not at all help with explaining that, right? Because it does not offer us a physical mechanism, right? It is only something that could help with explaining statistical improbabilities. It doesn't actually tell you a physical mechanism, right? Because, so like in the case of us humans, for example, right, that's the main intelligent designer that we observe, right, that we have observational evidence in regards to the mechanism of intelligent design. In the case of us, right, we have arms, hands, right, fingers. That plays a crucial role in our skillfulness in designing things, right? And no matter how intelligent a person is, even if they were the most intelligent person to ever live, if they were paralyzed and, and or didn't have limbs, then they would not be able to design like a complex machine like a watch, right? They would never be able to do that, right? And so that's not to say that arms and hands are necessary, but it's to show, right, that arms and hands, right, is like the physical mechanism through which we make the idea that we have like come into fruition, right? Whereas if you're not offering any specific physical structure, then you're not offering it like an explanation for like anything that we don't know physically how it could happen. You're not offering an explanation to that then, right? And obviously, it wouldn't it wouldn't have to be something with, muscle or bone, 5 fingers, wrists. When we're talking about the origin of cells aren't even something that could be put together by hand. Molecules, that's not something that could be put together by hand. And so, saying intelligent design, that doesn't tell us the physical mechanism any more than without saying that there was intelligent design, that it's not giving us a physical mechanism. And you could say like, oh, well, an intelligent designer could, figure out what is the best what needs to be what needs to be organized together in order for it to be physically possible. And so, organize like the right scenario so that it can be physically possible. But see, we could just as well say that, given enough chance opportunities, that scenario could play out by chance at some point. And if you're not going to offer like any physical structure, then you're not making the scenario any more physically possible than it would have been otherwise, right? Because again, like, a person with no limbs, right? They could come up with all types of ideas for making different things, right? But without the limbs, right, we don't actually have a physical mechanism offered. And then you could say that God has supernatural powers, but why would he need to be intelligent then, right? Because since the statistical aspect of it can be explained by just having a very large cosmos with lots of opportunities, right? Then for anything that you think that naturally that like it wouldn't be physically possible, we could just say that supernatural events randomly occur at different times. And so why would it need to be intelligent then, right? We don't even know anything about how supernatural things would work. So it's hard to really draw any inferences on like what would be necessary in that case. Supernatural doesn't really, it supernatural really only tells you what something isn't, not what it is. It tells you that it's not natural. It doesn't tell you what it is though. So it's not really in of itself an explanation. All right, that's all for now. See you guys.